Welcome to Most Notorious Housing Projects. In this episode, we will look at the notorious Clarksdale Housing Projects. Considered at the time as the most dangerous housing projects in the state of Kentucky. The Clarksdale Housing Complex was a public housing project built in 1939. Clarksdale was occupied from 1939 late 2004. It was the first public housing complex built in the city, and up until its demolition, completed in 2005, it was the largest public housing project in the state of Kentucky. It consisted of 58 2- and 3-story buildings. Like most public housing complexes, Clarksdale was initially built to support veterans and their families after World War II. Clarksdale was originally built for and occupied by whites tenants, while Beecher Terrace, built several years afterward, was designed for blacks. However, entering into the mid-1960s, Clarksdale's population slowly became predominantly black around the same time white flight began in the west end of Louisville. Until its demise, Clarksdale was one of many developments overseen by the Louisville Metro Housing Authority, which primarily served as housing for single-family units with low income. Clarksdale's location was bounded by Jefferson Street to the north, Jackson Street on the west, Muhammad Ali Boulevard to the south, and Shelby Street to the east. It was located adjacent to its sister complex, Dosker Manor, which initially served as a complex for the elderly and is still standing today. St. Boniface Catholic Church, which also still stands today, was positioned within the boundaries of the complex on East Liberty Street. Both Clarksdale and Dosker Manor's location also mark the eastern boundary line of downtown into what is known as the Phoenix Hill neighborhood of Louisville. The northern end of Phoenix Hill, especially along East Market and Jefferson Streets, has been funded and developed by private business owners into what developers and the local community known as New Lou, short for New Louisville, although the historical name for the area geographically is Phoenix Hill and East Market District. As with most housing projects throughout the country, Clarksdale's age and maintenance were insufficient for such a large complex designed for single-family and low-income households. Clarksdale in its prime was one of the most notorious and crime-ridden housing projects within the city, with high drug activity, murder, and gang activity prevalent.
It was in the Clarksdale Housing Project gang, also called CDP. That housing project has since been torn down. He says tearing down the projects has moved gang members to other areas.
The 65-year-old complex was completely demolished in 2005 as part of the city's plan to redevelop housing in the downtown area due to Louisville's rapid economic growth within the downtown business district. The Clarksdale complex was the second public housing site in Louisville to undergo this process, after the Cotter/Lang homes revitalization into what is now known as the Villages of Park Duval. This redevelopment plan was part of the Hope VI program responsible for the same revitalization of Chicago's plan for transformation with the demolition of housing projects and other major cities throughout the United States. East Louisville Park and 2 local liquor/grocery stores were also absolved in the process per eminent domain laws and approval of the council. People came to realize that the area surrounding this publicly owned property was an epicenter for crime and a very high risk to public safety. Tenants from Clarksdale were forced to relocate to other areas and other housing projects throughout the city, which often brought tension and issues with original residents from those particular areas. The newly redeveloped area, which is the prior site of Clarksdale, is now known as Liberty Green, named after Liberty Street, which ran directly through the middle of the complex west to east. The name Liberty Green also stems from the area in the late 19th century, being rich with green fields. Prior to the demolition, many tenants argued that due to Clarksdale's close proximity to downtown Louisville, that location became the prime factor of the revitalization more so than crime, which was proposed as one of the main purposes for the demolition. Many tenants who opposed the demolition have argued that with the growth, expansion, and development of downtown attractions such as 4th Street Live, an abundance of newly developed high-end apartments and condos, KFC Yum Center, and Louisville Waterfront Park, that having Clarksdale in the immediate area would cause concerns with property and retail value for such attractions, therefore raised questions on the safety of patrons, tourists, and citizens as a whole. Ironically, since the demise of Clarksdale and other housing projects in the city from these redevelopment plans, Louisville's crime and murder rate has now risen to an all-time high as a whole, and in other parts of the city, particularly the West End, which were previously very high already. Crime has also risen into areas of the city in which crime was almost non-existent before, particularly certain areas of the Highlands, South End, and smaller areas within the East End. Today, local TV repair shop and family-owned business, Clarksdale TV, located nearby on South Shelby Street and Broadway, along with a one-block alley between South Campbell and South Wenzel Streets near East Madison and Phoenix Hill, are the only remnants bearing the Clarksdale name within the city of Louisville. Interesting thing about living in a good or bad area is that regardless of its reputation, there are memories and moments that are never forgotten. Birthday parties, graduations, and family picnics all remembered and associated with the place. As well, though, many times these places can contain horrible memories we hope to escape. Clarksdale for many people was home. It was what they had. With 713 units, it was the home at some time for thousands of people. But eventually, with concentrated poverty and drugs being pressed hard on the streets, these homes became an area of crime, murder, and gang wars. When you have several generations grow up in a place, it's hard to see it go. There have been mixed reviews by different people on how it has been since moving back into the area now known as Liberty Green. Most affirm the need for the project to happen, but few are somewhat heartbroken by the community they once knew being gone. Thank you for watching Most Notorious Housing Projects. See you on the next episode.